Today I'm filming on the Sony ZV-1 II, but I'm also filming on the Sony ZV-1 Mark II. And if that wasn't enough, I'm also filming on the Sony ZV-E1. Today I'm doing a vlogging shootout to determine whether or not these three cameras are truly as amazing at vlogging as Sony claims them to be, or if they're gonna fall short. My name's Andrew. Welcome to the Lens Rentals channel. Before the vlog though, I wanted to go ahead and break down the specs of each one of these cameras. There was a lot of confusion online around the ZV line, and I think what's interesting is that Sony spent their energy and their time trying to craft a perfect camera for content creators on YouTube and TikTok. So starting with the ZV-1 II, this camera was designed to originally replace the Sony ZV-1, the OG camera. One of the main issues with that first ZV camera that Sony is trying to amend was focal length. Essentially, for vloggers and creators, we need a wide angled lens so that we can get all of the details that we want to in our shot. Traditionally, you're going to shoot anywhere from 15 to 24, 25 millimeters just because you want to be able to capture yourself in the environment that you're in. The ZV-1 II was designed to remedy that with a wider focal length of 20 millimeters. On top of that, the ZV-1 has all of the specs that you would expect in a modern day digital camera. It's got a 20 megapixel sensor, 8-bit 4K video recording at 420, contrast-based autofocus, and a very simple design and menu system to help creators simply open up the box and get to creating. Up next is the ZV-1 Mark II, and this thing goes even wider with an 18 millimeter equivalent focal length. I guess 20 millimeters wasn't enough for the content creators who were using the Sony ZV-1 II. They wanted more, and Sony answered. It's got all the same goodies packed into it though. 4K 8-bit recording. It has image stabilization like the Z1 F does as well. But what's really nice about this one is that it actually has a built-in ND filter that goes about 1 to 3 stops to help you maximize your shooting outside in sunny or harsh location. A few things that these two cameras share as well, which I think is kind of nice, is they do have picture profile modes if you don't want to spend much time in the edit. And that's something that I'm actually trying out to give a true hands-on experience with these cameras. I'm not shooting in log. I am using their baked-in color science, and I'm giving them the benefit that they're going to give me the best image possible. On top of that, the Mark II has something really interesting, and that is a cinematic vlogging mode. Cinematic. I know we don't like that word here on the internet, but is there a better word to use? I don't think so. And lastly, we're going to talk about this camera right here, which is the Sony ZV-E1. Now this is way more similar to what I am used to shooting with. A full frame, interchangeable lens, bodied camera. This is essentially the step up from these other pocket cams. This has pro level features like 10-bit 422 capture and 5-axis image stabilization. That's pretty nice. This sits really nicely at the top of the ZV line, but just shy of the Sony A7S or the FX3. And you'll see here that I've paired it with an 18 to 24 millimeter full frame lens. In the past, I've vlogged with large cameras. I've vlogged with cameras where I could change out the lenses and get different shots depending on the lenses that I was using. So this again feels a lot more familiar to me. But the benefits of these two smaller cameras here are really intriguing to me. Sony really tried to cram as much as possible into these little bodies, and I'm so curious to see whether or not cramming features in tiny cameras is gonna pay off. We can talk about the specs all day on paper, but what really matters is whether or not they nailed it in application. So let's go have the best day ever. We're gonna start it off with a very important ingredient. It's good to see you, bro.
See you, bro.
How you doing?
Chilling.
I really did get to pick the most beautiful location here in the city for today's shoot. I'm spoiled. Since we are doing tests on each one of these cameras, I thought it would be appropriate to kind of explain my thought process behind what makes a great vlogging camera. And the first thing is movement. You cannot have a compelling vlog without engaging movement. I have seen some cautionary words on the internet about these cameras, and if you do not have image stabilization on, the footage is almost unwatchable. So I'm really curious to see whether or not that's true. Are we about to get motion sickness? I don't know. The next test we're going to focus on after movement is looking at the accessories and the special features that each one of these cameras have. Sony really threw everything at us with these cameras. They really wanted to make this a one-stop shop for vloggers, for content creators. Everything is starting with the ZV-1 II, and you'll notice notice, if you haven't already, that there will be information down at one of the corners of the screen letting you know which camera is being used and what footage you are seeing. Everything I am shooting is in a standard picture profile. I'm not doing anything fancy. Again, I'm trying to think about this as a content creator and a vlogger who just simply wants to open up the box, charge up the cameras, and get to creating. So we are currently walking with the ZV-1 Well, maybe it's a little bit shaky. All right, now we're using what Sony calls steady shot. So this is definitely looking, I'm having to look over here. It's definitely looking better. The only thing is though, if you've noticed that I've not changed the length of my arms, I've not grown longer arms, so it crops in. Steady shot crops in significantly, but the micro jiggle and jitters that we were getting when I was walking just kind of freehand seem to have dissipated a little bit. And just like that, we are on the ZV-1 Mark II. And here we are with the stabilization on. Again, there is a crop, but I would say that the micro jitters and movements are obviously significantly less. And that is a key difference between these cameras and something like the ZV-1, which has actual 5-axis image stabilization. That means that the sensor is going to sit and kind of jiggle around to eliminate movement. These don't have that. These are relying on digital stabilization, and I feel like digital stabilization can only bring you so far. And this is just not fair because this camera, I actually really like this camera. This is the ZV-1, and this has the internal body stabilization. This is significantly larger than the sensors in the other two cameras, and there is no crop because I am not doing digital image stabilization. So we're getting the full range here that this lens and this sensor has to offer. I can get so much in my shot, which is really nice when you are vlogging and you're trying to draw attention to your surroundings and show people where you're at. And that is the allure of the ZV-1, is because this is just that next step up in the camera lineup that just makes you kind of go, I kind of want it. So it may seem like a little bit of like a one-sided argument because we have such an amazing camera in the ZV-1, but I really don't want it to be forgotten that I'm working with a massive lens. This is a full frame sensor. The image quality and what I'm going to be able to do in regards to shots is going to be far superior than what I'm going to do with these little handheld cameras. But that's not the point, right? These aren't supposed to do what this camera does. These are supposed to capture the moments in the everyday, like the moments in between the fancy setups and the big shots and all that fun stuff. This is meant to be just your everyday vlogging companion and content creation companion. But we need to put these things through the ringer a little bit longer, and we need to look at what specs are crammed in here that are actually viable for content creators. So cinematic mode, different shooting modes, and also we got to test out these mics as well. Before we do anything else, we've got to try out cinematic vlog mode. So we are back in the studio because I got really sweaty and there's a 105-degree heat index today, and I could no longer have the best day ever outside in this heat. But I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about the last two things that stuck out to me about these cameras. And the very first thing has to be this Sony tripod mount that they designed to pair with each one of these cameras via Bluetooth. It's incredibly easy to pair, and the connection time is very minimal. So I was actually able to switch between all of these different cameras fairly quickly. When connected via Bluetooth, you can use this tele and wide zoom rocker here to zoom in and out. Obviously, that's going to have more impact with the ZV-1 Mark II because it actually has a telephoto lens. The ZV-1F will have a digital zoom because that is a fixed lens. It's also great to be able to go ahead and start filming straight from the tripod. And in reality, there's a lot of different ways that you can begin recording on these cameras. You have the record button on top, obviously. There's also a record button on the screens, and then also with this tripod, Sony really wants you to have an opportunity to capture the footage you want to capture. Moving on from this tripod, we had a myriad of different audio experiences that I wanted to talk about. And the very first ones have to be the on-camera microphones. Now, the ZV-1F is the oldest in this lineup, meaning that it does not have the omnidirectional audio recording technology that the newer cameras have. But I will say, even without that, the audio performed fairly well. Sony even provided one of these little baby dead cats that just snaps into the hot shoe, covers up the microphone, and helps with wind and noise. The only thing is that this also does cover up the power button. Now here is my one word of warning for you if you're going to be using on-camera audio. These mics on these cameras are extremely sensitive, so you can control the sensitivity in your setting. Bear in mind that if anything touches the body of the camera, aka this little wrist strap here, if it knocks against the body, the microphone is going to pick that up, which happened to me while I was walking. Since we are talking about the on-camera mics first, let's also cover this omnidirectional audio option that the ZV-1 Mark II and the ZV-E1 both have. Essentially what this allows you to do is control the direction as to which the microphone is going to pick up audio. In the past, I would vlog, and if I was holding the camera and trying to narrate something as I was capturing it, the microphone would be pointed this way, so I would always hear muffled audio. It would sound like I was talking like this. Sony's new mics are designed to be able to triangulate the direction to which audio is coming, and you get to choose which direction you want to focus on. Moving forward, let's talk about the next audio option that I used, and I actually used it in the very beginning of this video. And that's the Sony ECM-W2 Honestly, Sony with these names. Either way, this was really great on the ZV-E1. I will say that it did not pair perfectly with the ZV-1 Mark II. It gave me an error message, so what I had to do was essentially set it to analog mode as opposed to digital. All that means is that the audio was being processed digitally through the hot shoe versus analog, which is just straight from the receiver to the microphone. And the last thing is it did not pair at all with the ZV-1 F. Next up is the Sony ECM-G1. This was on my Sony ZV-E1 while I was walking around outside. I connected it via this cable here into the camera. The thing about this that is nice is that it also has all of these different receiving points on this microphone to also take advantage of that omnidirectional audio setting that the ZV-E1 and the ZV-1 Mark II both have. And to round it all out, I just used a Sony Lav that plugged directly into my cameras. And personally, this is probably one of my preferred methods, just because I know I'm hardwired into the camera. I know I'm going to have a strong signal. Obviously, I'm limited because I can't move away from the camera as much. It gave me clear audio. I could definitely see you using this for like man on the street type content. If you're doing day in the life stuff with a talking head, using this mic just plugged into your camera, it makes a ton of sense. So that's the cameras, those are the accessories, and here are my last thoughts. Who would I recommend use the ZV-1 F, the ZV-1 Mark II, and the ZV-E1? Starting with the F, I definitely believe that this is perfect for content creators who are just getting started, for people who are dipping their toes into the style of content they want to make and are looking for an easy, no-frills option that will give them really great results. I would say that this is your next practical step outside of using your phone. It's got enough great features that 20mm fixed focal length is fine for wide angle shooting, and the audio either on camera or paired with the lav mic is going to give you a really clean and crisp sound. Next up, the ZV-1 Mark II is for that person looking for that next level, that next step up from just basic content creation. Maybe you're trying to push your content creation, or you're trying to expand your own skill set, right? This camera allows you to do just that, while also making your life a little easier with that omnidirectional audio setting that really can save you a lot of time and frustration when you're trying to get levels right in your edit. Now looking at the ZV-E1, right, this is not a cinema camera, but don't count it out. This is definitely something that you can grow with. This is something that's going to give you a wide range of lens options that allow you to really bring your content to that next level. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much for sticking around and hanging out with me in today's video. I hope that you had a good time. I hope that this got you excited to go create some content. And if it did, then I ask you help us out by simply liking, commenting, subscribing. This really does help us out to continue to provide resources and content for you. And if you are ready to get creating with any one of these cameras or any of the accessories that I talked about today, you know where to go. Hit up the link in our bio to get your hands on it and rent these cameras. This will help you save some money, figure out what you want, and get creating. All right, I'll see you in the next one.